If there is one clear way that this pandemic has been mishandled, it is the messaging going to the public and the clash of personalities between politicians and reporters. Our leaders have become so defensive and seemingly immune to providing clear answers that here in New South Wales, confusion is spreading almost as quickly as the virus. So for all the public relations and so-called media experts watching, this is a lesson on how not to handle a crisis. Let's start with this week's exclusive story by the Australian's Yoni Bashan, which reveals the New South Wales government is addressing a proposal to open bars, restaurants and gyms to fully inoculated people when the state reaches the 70% vaccination target. The Premier is still to sign off on this plan, but in February this year, before the out-of-control Delta spread, Gladys Berejiklian told Ben Fordham that she was very much in favour of giving the vaccinated special privileges.
Look, I'd like to see incentives offered for people who do get vaccinated. I mean, it might very well be that the airlines decide they don't want to have anyone fly on an international holiday unless they're vaccinated. Now, we don't like to make things mandatory in New South Wales, but I think there should be very, very strong incentives for people to get the vaccine. It's the right thing to do. It's the best thing to do for everybody, not just yourself, but for your loved ones and for the broader community.
Makes sense. It does seem like the right thing to do, considering vaccinations offer such powerful protections against the virus. Surely you wouldn't want fully vaccinated people locked inside their homes while their businesses wither and die, particularly when it is the only reasonable long-term solution to the virus. Well, fast forward to June 28 and Berejiklian's message to the media had changed, this time refuting a question by Sky News and denying she had ever promised vaccinated people incentives.
Just returning to the vaccine there, you always said that it would be incentive-orientated, that's how you'd get people to come forward. There are no incentives at the moment.
I don't know who said that, and I certainly haven't. Can I say this, until we have enough vaccines for everybody who wants a vaccine to take it, it's not fair to have incentives. A lot of people want the vaccine, they just don't have access to it yet. A lot of people have signed up with us and said they want the vaccine. It's not fair to put incentives in place when people are saying, hang on, I want the vaccine, I know what this means, and it's not fair to put incentives in place so early when the demand is still really high.
The switch of rhetoric is particularly concerning here because it shows COVID-19 policy decisions can flip dramatically and very quickly. If the Australian story was incorrect and Gladys Berejiklian did not intend to ease restrictions for fully vaccinated people until everyone had a chance to become fully vaccinated, it would indeed be very tragic. Take a look at Israel, which has more than 80% of its population vaccinated and is still very much in the grips of a deadly Delta outbreak, getting 600 daily cases per 1 million people. That's a population primarily vaccinated by Pfizer, and its 80% vaccination figure is only blunting the spread of Delta, as opposed to stopping it completely. What the vaccine will do is reduce the number of people who are critically sick, but it will not eliminate the virus in a way other states are hoping it will. Would Berejiklian still want to keep her state locked down when she realised the high vaccination rates did not completely snuff out COVID-19 case numbers? Now, this reality might be difficult for some people to process, but it is essential that our leaders are honest and transparent about their intentions, because you cannot keep people locked down without knowing an end date and having a reasonable path forward. Thankfully, I think everyone can take some comfort in the fact that the Australian story is accurate and the New South Wales government does intend to slowly open up despite the growing case numbers. Because before the scoop dropped in the paper, Berejiklian's words at press conferences this week hinted at changes to come.
I know these are challenging times, but I also can see the light at the end of the tunnel. The next few weeks will be hard. But know that once we hit those higher vaccination rates, life will feel much better. Life will look much rosier.
Let's just hope she doesn't change her mind yet again and create even more COVID confusion in the media. Sophie, the most frustrating thing for me looking at these press conferences and listening to the questions of reporters is the change of rhetoric and our leaders obfuscating and refusing to answer direct questions. Is it frustrating to you as a journalist watching that?
Absolutely, Jack. I'm sick and tired of the daily press conferences. I think they're damaging for so many people, Jack. Remove the media for a moment. I mean, they're doing their jobs, they're at their presses, asking questions. But for those poor people at home with their businesses shut down, they've got stress in their household, they're trying to homeschool, and they're looking for hope, and they do not have it, Jack. And we've seen these lines wheeled out over the pandemic, flatten the curve. We must learn to live with the virus. I mean, that's all been absolutely thrown out the window. And the question a lot of people ask me is, if you've had both vaccinations, which I myself have, what is the incentive now? What is the gain for you? Because these people who have been double vaxxed are still locked down. There's so much confusion out there. There's frustration. The press conferences offer absolutely no hope. In fact, I leave watching them just feeling even more down about everything, because there's been set these huge high vaccination targets. But even at those, we have not been guaranteed that we will get our freedoms back.
Caleb, how do you make of the public relations effort by our Premier?
I think it's pretty poor, and it's not just Gladys Berejiklian. I think all premiers have been susceptible to doing this at times during their press conferences. I mean, they call these press conferences, right? They say the press come and ask questions of us, ask questions of our public health officers, whatever, and then they refuse to answer the questions, and they get snarky with reporters, and they complain about being asked certain questions. I mean, if you don't want to answer questions, don't call a press conference. It's pretty simple stuff. You've got Gladys Berejiklian this week going off her chops at Andrew Clennell, saying, this is not your press conference. You've got Daniel Andrews constantly saying to reporters, well, just hang on a minute. Oh, let me finish. Don't interrupt. Rah, rah, rah. You got the treatment that Chris Kenny received a couple of months ago, or it was not even a couple of months ago, about a month ago, I suppose, in South Australia when he went to the Premier's press conference, Stephen Marshall's press conference. The response he got from Marshall, the response he got from Nicola Spurrier, the Chief Public Health Officer, was snarky. Now, if you don't want to answer questions, don't have a press conference. It's pretty simple. Someone has to ask tough questions. You're not always going to get questions that look good for you, but these are things that the public deserve to know. Just answer them. It's part of the job. But I think the problem is that there are a lot of people in the public who kind of view the work that is being done by journalists as antagonistic towards politicians who they think are trying to do the best they can. And so they actually get quite defensive of politicians and public health officers and say, well, why are journalists asking these questions? The difference here now is that these press conferences, unlike any time really before, are being broadcast live every day. So people are starting to see how the sausage is being put together. And I'm not sure that people are actually enjoying seeing what goes into the sausage, be that as it may. Just answer the question.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I guess the only point I would make to add on to that is, when you're losing your civil liberties at an unprecedented rate, you should be more transparent, not less. It should be directly proportional to the amount of restrictions.